Those entertaining geniuses at Ford Australia have quietly just slashed the gross combination mass of the Ford F-150 by a staggering 450 kilos. It's a big ask, isn't it? Expecting perhaps the world's least competent major car maker to get a functional specification of this nature right. Like deciding how much its Halo truck can safely carry while it's also towing. Which is, after all, one of those foundational truck things, when you think about it. Dude, when I first started wasting my life as a motoring journo, it was the early 90s. You look out the window, there's a dinosaur in the street. Everyone had one. We were lucky. We had a T-Rex, so that was nice. And that's about the time I first started hoping that Ford would eventually get its Scheisserhausen together because it had such potential. In other news, I'm still waiting, but my hope tank is on E. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card. Okay, so this report blipped here on Car Expert, and that happened after they were either tipped off or they noticed it for themselves maybe on F-150 Owners Shitsville Facebook group. Probably a tip-off on balance, like F-150 Owners Group Shitsville. Can you imagine how rampant the beard stroking is on that page, even among the chicks? I'd love to do an IQ test of the members. That would be interesting. Like, I'd love someone else to IQ test them and then get back to me with the results. Above or below the room temperature in degrees C? That's the question. Anyway, Jay Moo over there at the other expert, credit where it's due, he actually asked Ford a fairly predictable "what the?" And some unidentified spokeswonk responded to him thus. Ford Australia has updated the published maximum gross combination mass of the F-150 lineup to include a reduction to account for maximum towable downforce weight, 10% of the aggregate trailer mass. Okay, so I would argue that that's not an update, you slick-talking, faceless plastic surgeon of spin. That's a downgrade. By any definition. By almost half a friggin' tonne, too. And this begs an obvious question, at least it does to me. Will Ford Australia ever stop shooting itself in the junk by accident? This video is sponsored by Osight. Osight's September sale event is now on until Friday, the 27th at midnight. And here are the specials. Perrin 3 is easy to hold over long-distance walks at night thanks to the 90-degree beam, and it morphs into a head torch with the supplied elastic rig. Great for playing doctor or, I guess, changing a tyre in the boonies. Baton Turbo is tiny but also powerful. Awesome EDC torch. It comes with a rechargeable 18350 battery, but in a pinch you can also slip in a single-use CR123A. It's got half a K of range in turbo mode too. Arcfeld Ultra is slimline, so it goes in the pocket easy, and you get a torch plus a UV light and a laser pointer, and it's made of this special alloy that's harder than 6061 and stronger than TA2 titanium. So good luck killing it. The Sphere looks like a toy, but it's absolutely not. It's great for camping and a real winner with the kids, especially in a blackout. It's got app control, so you just Bluetooth it to your phone and there's like a billion different brightnesses and colour combination modes to choose from, and it's a lot tougher than it looks. Seeker 4 Pro is great for camping, comfortable to hold and super bright on turbo mode. 4,600 lumens, and it's got the new generation holster that accepts the standard Osight magnetic charger as well as USB-C. And finally, the Osight, an aftermarket sight for the licensed shooters out there. Essentially, it sits on the top of your firearm and it paints a 3 minute of arc dot wherever you zero it. It's inductively charged and it kind of lasts forever, and you can make easy windage and elevation adjustments. It's compatible with most major brands with the right adapter plate. I'll put a link in the description, plus a code in case you missed the sale, and if you click that card just up there, it'll take you to a recent report I did on my favourite Olights and how you can choose the right one for your particular application, because otherwise there's hundreds to wade through, aren't there? Links to all the torches just mentioned in the description, and thanks to Osight for sponsoring this video. Ford sold 145 F-150s last year and 1,443 so far this year, and I'm assuming a major selling proposition of that hastily converted six-figure Dearborn shit heap was its massive towing potential, 4.5 tons. Beard strokers do love towing their big box of his and hers commingled effluent all the way to Dingo Piss Creek in retirement, don't they? And that, kiddies, is why you need to pay really close attention to science and mathematics at school. There's no need to end up like mommy and daddy. It's not a foregone conclusion at all, and genetics is only half of the story. This means that roughly 1,600 people own F-150s right now, and they bought them, in the case of the short wheelbase ones, with a GCM of 7,720 kilos. Presumably the existing ones already on the road are going to be unchanged. Long wheelbase effluent toters had a GCM of 7,765 kilos. So the short wheelbase ones are now down to 7,270 kilos, and the long wheelbase ones are down to 7,315 kegs, which is down 450 kegs in each case, corresponding to the download limit, like the tow ball download limit of that vehicle, which is 10% of its 4.5 ton maximum tow capacity, like maximum trailer weight. That's if you use the big balls too, like the pair you imagine people think you might have when they see you in your massive compensation truck. 70mm balls. Can tow 4.5 tons is what I'm saying. If you use a standard 50mm ball, 3.5 tons, like everyone else. To me, this downgrade just screams engineering F up from the get-go. Like, it's got the bullhorn out and it's letting rip. And that's what it's saying. See, when you design a truck, you start with the loads, don't you? You have this meeting, you all sit down, you say, we need it to carry X and to tow Y, and, you know, if it comes to light that it can't actually do both of those maxima at the same time, and hardly any truck can, we need to arrive at a safe compromise for the maximum it can carry, while it's also towing a big fat tank of a couple's commingled effluent all the way through the outback, you know, for the sake of safety. That's what the gross combination mass actually is. It's the total all-up weight limit of the vehicle, its payload, including people and accessories, and the loaded trailer, complete with effluent. Nothing else about Ford's big effluent carriage has changed in this downgrading process. The payload, tow ball download, and tow capacity are all the same as before, apparently. This downgrade also reeks of high-level incompetence, doesn't it? Like, checks and balances, dude. How can you forget to factor in the 450 kilos of tow ball download that the vehicle is carrying when it's also towing maximum effluent, right? And fully loaded. I don't get that. It's a very simple computational process to get wrong. To be fair, though, this is the company that couldn't launch the new Ranger when it wanted to, because it couldn't figure out how to get hundreds of essential components for that car out of its suppliers in China. And when it did finally get them to the factory in Thailand, they didn't weld the yokes on the tail shaft properly in phase, and the vehicles were therefore, as Johnny Kidd and the Pirates would have said, shaken all over. Dude. And don't get me started on the fiasco with the Everest Base Camp roof rack. That was hilarious too, because obviously didn't think about their own specifications there. So Ford Australia makes this downgrade to their Halo truck. The likes of Car Expert report it diligently, but they also give them a massage and a reach around, and above all else, they don't criticise Ford too hard, meaning at all, because, like most publishers, Australia's second best Car Expert loves a good hard suck on Ford's advertising budget. And that means about 1,600 beard strokers so far are out there driving F-150s that can be dangerously overloaded by almost half a tonne legally, so yay, well done, Ford. Or, I suppose, they could just make the downgrade retrospective, couldn't they? And compensate existing owners for the fact that their shitboxes can't do what they said they could do when purchased, which, apart from anything else, is a breach of Australian consumer law. Either way, this is a shit sandwich from a shop that ran out of bread in 1993. In other fascinating Ford news, Ford's ultimate cheese in Detroit, Jim Farley, and one of the other senior executive cheeses named, I'm going to say, John Thornton, returned from a visit to China earlier in the year and said, and here I must paraphrase, "Golly gee, Jim Bob, those dang Chinese boy don't build a half-bad car." This is rather a large admission for the cheese of Ford to make. Jim Bob actually told Rupert's Wall Street Journal that President Xi's mob were a, quote, existential threat, which had learned to commit the sin of, quote, elegant, low-cost engineering. This is also a big call from the boss of the brand responsible for the Pinto. Let us not forget. Talk about elegant, low-cost engineering. What a classic with Pinto. Classic piece of shit. Ford's financial cheese, John Lawler, turned to Jim Bob one day recently and said, quote, "This is nothing like before, Jim Bob. These guys are ahead of us," unquote. Imagine that, somebody being ahead of Ford in the automotive game. Here's a photo of a holding yard, right, full of that's not funny though, full of F-150 Lightning electric pickups on fire, for you to consider the confronting concept of other car makers being ahead of Ford somehow. To the bean-counting cheese of Ford, I would respectfully retort on this, no shit, Sherlock, ahead of you guys. You guys have been asleep at the wheel since before the GFC. You live on corporate welfare, and now you're kind of shocked that you've been overtaken. Like, really? Ford's side hustle in Thailand can't get the tail shaft of a Ranger right, and its dudes down under can't remember whether or not to carry the 450 kilos when determining Optimus Prime Mover's gross fucking combination mass for toting that effluent in the outback. In closing, I suppose you've already also seen the story about the US proposing to ban Chinese EVs because they could be, deep state AI-powered instruments of the CCP threat, collecting metadata, analysing infrastructure and measuring high fructose corn syrup tolerance of the population generally, etc. Eavesdropping on conversations at the Wendy's drive-through, whatever. Do you suppose that Jim Bob might have a couple of dozen Congress plonkers on speed dial, plus 100 or so spin doctors of his own, all with their asses up in the stratosphere and their noses on the grindstone, working diligently on turning a de facto trade sanction into the wonder bra of national security concerns? Is that what's really happening here? Especially as no Chinese EVs are actually currently on sale in the US at this point. I'd suggest that Jim Bob might be far better off simply cracking the code on how to build affordable, well-engineered Fords that proper frog-gigging, mudslinging, shine, slurping, trucker hat rednecks actually want. If he just manages to do that, yellow threat matrix solved.